Before we begin today's episode, I want to share some exciting news. After months of building, reflecting, and dreaming, Serenade to the Soul is evolving into Seen, Heard, Loved, a Jackie Yoga podcast. Serenade to the Soul is my first step toward living my dharma, my mission in this lifetime, and sharing what I believe is my deepest mission, helping people feel seen, heard, and loved. Serenade to the Soul podcast helped me find my voice, and I'm so grateful you've been a part of that journey. Beginning next week, officially June 25th, 2026, that's a Friday, you'll see a new name, a new look, and an expanded vision, but the heart remains the same. If you're listening before June 21st, I'd love to invite you to our live virtual launch celebration at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Join our WhatsApp community through the link in the show notes to receive your Zoom link and event details. And there will also be special giveaways to help honor those in attendance. Welcome to Serenade to the Soul, a yoga and wellness experience. I'm your host, JackieOM. Welcome back to another episode of Serenade to the Soul. I'm your host, JackieOM, and today we are entering a conversation that feels like a deep exhale for the nervous system, for ourselves and our children and families. My guest, Danielle Wiseman, a parent, coach, and developmental consultant who has spent her life helping families understand the why behind their child's behavior. With a background in special education, infant and toddler development, and now parent coaching and advocacy, Danielle's work is rooted in connection, compassion, and true emotional attunement. This is an episode about presence and remembering who we are as parents and as humans. Danielle, before we begin, what is your origin story with the work you do?
Wow, that is such a good question. It started with working in special education. I was a teacher for children with special needs, and it evolved into becoming an infant toddler developmental specialist. And from there, I found that I was coaching families and educators. And I saw this change when I started coaching families and educators and less than working with the children. And it was incredible because when we work with the kids, we have this impact on them, right? And it is a small impact. We get like an hour, a little bit of time with them. But when we work with the parent or the teacher, we have this monumental impact. We can really change their life, the child's life. And so when I saw this change, I was like, oh my gosh, this is 100% what I want to do. And so it evolved into consulting, and then it evolved into, I want to do this more. I want to be able to work with parents more. I want to be able to help parents more. And so I sought out the parent coaching certification and started parent coaching, which is like 100% where my heart and soul is. Like, I adore being able to support parents fully, not just in how they're parenting, but just like also how they're living their life. Because when we're living our life to our fullest, when we're becoming kind of just like even stepping into our more authentic selves as parents, we truly parent better and we can be more present for our children. So that's my origin story. Yeah.
You have a framework for teaching emotional regulation as a system rather than a single skill. Can you walk us through what that looks like in a way that's accessible for our audience?
Yeah. So I think in order for us to be able to really even understand my framework, you really actually have to adopt a principle first. So the principle you have to adopt is that the living system principle. And that might come very natural to a lot of people. The living system principle is that you and I as human beings, we're living human beings. But a lot of times we go throughout our lives, we living in a very like robotic kind of framework. We live in a very mechanistic type of world, if you think about it. We are really focused on performance and we are less focused on how we participate and show up in the world. So we're constantly thinking, that our children have to do these certain things, get these certain test scores. They have to behave a certain way. And this is a really mechanistic viewpoint. So we really have to shift our idea that our children and us, we're living human beings. We're constantly growing. We're constantly molding. We're changing. And we're also feeding off of each other no matter what. So once we kind of adapt that, and we also adapt that growth mindset that we're always going to be growing, we're always going to be expanding, we're always changing, it really shifts things, it changes things. So with that in mind, and understanding that we as human beings are a system and we feed off of each other, we have to understand that there is a framework in our emotional regulation. So in the family, I believe it's the child, it's the parent, and it's the environment. And we all interact with each other. We all feed off of each other. So let's say, for example, the child is emotionally doing very well in the moment. The environment is very calm, but the parent comes in and is having a hard day at work. It's going to affect that child no matter what. Because the child, even if the parent doesn't say anything to that child, but if the parent comes home, they're stressed out, they're having a difficult time, they're being short, or they're just even like having that energy, it's going to affect that child. And then the child is going to become dysregulated. Mm-hmm. And if let's switch it a little, let's say that the parent is emotionally regulated, the child is emotionally regulated, but the environment is in turmoil. Let's say something is happening. Let's say there's war or something like that going on in the environment. It's going to affect everything around us. Or let's say that there's something going on in the home that's affecting the child. It's going to start affecting, these two people in that system. So what's really important and what's really unique about this is that I usually draw a Venn diagram for my parents, and I show my parents how this is overlapping, how these three systems are overlapping. Mm-hmm. And what's really amazing is that the parent is involved in all of these parts. So the parent overlaps in all of these parts. And when the parent is able to be a part of all of these different systems, they do have control. And that's really what is unique and special about it, is because a lot of times parents will tell me, I don't have control over my child. I don't have control over this environment. I don't have control over this situation. And the truth is if we can make an inner change, if we can make some inward change, and we can just focus on ourselves, then guess what? We can hold enough room and we can have enough regulation where our child, it will keep that calm for our child. Our child will be able to borrow our regulation. They will be able to have that calm. And no matter what is going on in the environment, they're going to be able to stay with us. It's going to overlap with us. Mm. So, and I've seen it happen time and time again. And sometimes we do have to work on that environment piece, because when that environment, like, let's say there's something going on at school, when it keeps hitting that kid, and, like, there's, let's say, like, a bully at school or something, and it keeps getting that kid every single day, the parent does need to go into that environment space, and they do need to find solutions in that environment. So sometimes we do need to make changes to that environment. So I don't ignore that environment piece. I do a lot of times tell parents, okay, what changes do we need to make in our environment? Because sometimes it does take changes in our environment. Sometimes it does say, like, we do have to do things like changing our bedtime routine, things like that. So there are pieces in there, but a lot of times, the parent has a lot of control. There is a lot of ways that we can look inward. So I believe that it is like those three pieces, and that is a part of my framework. So I'm always looking at those three pieces. But the big part of it is taking the weight off the child. Because a lot of times when people will come to me for behaviors, it is because they want to fix something in their child. And a lot of books that you read these days will say, I want you to try these three things, and here's these solutions, and this will help you with your kid. And the problem is always focused on the child. And I hear that. But it's really not the solution. The focus should be on yourself. If we can start looking at things and focusing on how we can change things in ourselves, and change things inward, and change things in our environment, our children are pretty much okay.
Yeah.
They're self-organizing. They're just living life. They're just doing it.
Yeah.
And if we are able to stay, like, calm and regulated, and be there for them and show up for them, it's going to be okay. It really is.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just need to create that supportive environment.
For sure. I
Yeah.
really appreciate how you said take the weight off the child. This reminds me of balance, but like everyone taking responsibility for their own actions and emotions. And when we don't, we kind of put it on to the person. It's like a mirror that doesn't reflect back. And then that person has to, or child has to take on the emotional weight of the person not taking on the responsibility to self-regulate or to take care of your inwardly. And like you just said, children are just living life and enjoying, and just simply being. Whereas adults, we're conditioned to, like you said, perform and function like machines, be at specific places on time. So when we're burdening our child, thinking they need to be fixed or something's wrong with them, I completely agree with you. When that just makes the child heavy, and maybe even like the outcome that you want that's not the most productive way. So taking the weight off the child, and letting them be children, that's a beautiful sentiment. Where do most parents misunderstand emotional regulation, both in our children and ourselves?
I mean, I think most parents misunderstand emotional regulation because they think it's a problem that they need to fix. And again, it's not a problem, emotional regulation. It's an essence of childhood. It is something that kids are doing from the time they are born. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Is when you take a baby and they, that moment when they look at you and you, like, are saying, I love you. And they look at you and it's like they're saying it back to you. They know they can feel the connectedness. They can feel that emotion from you. And kids feel emotion from you without you saying anything. like all the time. And I want all of everyone that's listening today just to start recognizing that before words come out of your mouth, just start to recognize how, when you walk in the door, how your kids are sensing your emotional regulation, how they're sensing your emotions, how they're sensing your connectedness just by how you are present with them. Because kids are so attuned to it. They're more attuned than anybody we know. Yeah. And I think we don't give them that credit sometimes, that they actually can feel us more than anyone. Mm-hmm. And so I think when we are looking at kids, we're constantly thinking, oh my gosh, we have to fix these behaviors. And that's not the case. Kids are learning emotional regulation, and we're here to guide them. Mm-hmm. That's all. We're just here to guide them by showing them, mm-hmm. and by modeling for them, mm-hmm. and by, connecting with them. So it's very hard, because I think a lot of times, again, I hear a lot of people say, okay, I need to teach my kids how to breathe, right? You have 3-year-olds, right?
Yeah.
So this is one that I always like to show as an example, because my son did this to me. I would be like, okay, sweetheart, I just need you to take a deep breath. Like, let's take a deep breath together. And he just smacked me in the face. And I was like, okay, well, that didn't work. But you know what? If I did an honest inventory of myself in that moment, and I asked myself, was I calm in that moment when I was saying, sweetheart, I need you to take a deep breath, just breathe, just take a deep breath? And like, honestly, no, I wasn't. I was trying to control the situation.
Yeah.
I wasn't, allowing him to feel in that moment and be mad. And I wasn't allowing him to just be with his emotions. And I was just trying to get him to calm down, because, well, I was kind of embarrassed about the other people that were watching me with this child who was melting down. It was in front of other people. And, and just to be totally honest, like, that's really what was happening. And, if I could go back and do it again, I would have focused on myself. I would have looked inward. I would have calmed myself first and just allowed him to feel my calmness and my presence.
Yeah.
And if he could have just known, okay, my mom is calm. I can hear her breath. I can feel her like heartbeat being soft. She's taking me to a safe place where I can feel. And that's it. Like, that is like the only expectation I put on him. I didn't tell him what he had to do. I just modeled what needed to be done. I think it would have been handled a little bit differently. I don't think I would have gotten hit in the face. And sometimes, even like as a consultant, as a coach, I forget these things. We all do, because we're not perfect.
Yeah.
It's not like I was doing anything wrong, but like, man, and that's where we have to kind of like say, what was my intention in this, So when I think about that question, like, what do I want parents to know about like emotional regulation? Well, where are your intentions really?
Yeah.
What are your intentions in this? Mm-hmm. Because truly, sometimes we just want our kids to be controlled. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing. We want to raise healthy kids that have autonomy, that have emotional intelligence, they have choice. We want to raise kids that grow up to be their authentic selves. Truly, that's what we want.
Yeah.
How can we do that if we're telling them what to do all the time?
So true.
And
yeah.
And it's true, even with emotional regulation, even if we tell them like how to feel all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah. And this is hard stuff too, but what I love about parenthood is just how much better I've become Like I've really stepped into my power when I became a parent.
Yeah.
Because one, you have to, and then just like the essence about everything you're saying right now, I this is so powerful, like that how your child can borrow your calm, how your child is like you and your child share energy, or one field of awareness, like one,
Yes.
two becomes one, or however many.
Yes.
And your story reminds me, I've been thinking recently too, but you kind of come into my mind as well when, especially with my son, if I want him to do something, like I'm like, hey, Atlas, can you pick up that toy over there? Or whatever I want him to do, but I'm saying it out of frustration and annoyance or but anxiousness. He'll act like he doesn't hear me, and then I'll get louder, like, hey, what? But then I'll be like, all right, Jackie, you breathe. Take a step
Yeah.
back. All right. You bring the calm. And then when I say it calmly, I get down on his level and I ask again in calm and through my heart. Immediately, he does what I want. And
Yes.
it makes such a difference. And they'll literally tune out anything that is not supportive and but connect when there's calm and presence. It is such a game changer.
It is.
Yeah.
And
What? Oh, go ahead.
I,
Yeah.
I love what you said there too. I mean, like, let's just talk about, what a strength that is that you got on his like physical field, and you got close to him, like, and you were able to, emotionally connect with him on from like what was in your heart. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is really strong right there. Like this is, I when you're able to tell a child, this is what I appreciate about you. And this is what I need you to do right now. And when you say it from like a calm and loving place, they feel that. And then here's the thing, what's really cool, and I know we want to, I want to talk about this some too, is it starts to build their autonomy some because they begin to develop a sense of belonging. They start to
Mm.
say, oh my gosh, my mom loves it when I do these things. And when I
Mhm.
clean up, you know, these are the things that we do in our family because it keeps our home clean. And this is like what our family does. And so like this right there, just that calm conversation of this is what we do in our family. This is starting to build autonomy. And that's what's also like really cool because it starts to build a sense of belonging.
Mhm.
So there's just like it kind of ends up being a snowball effect. Is that positivity, that connectedness? It starts to build in so many ways, and I think that's what's really cool. Just like a negative, like you were saying, like when we get, when things are toxic, it's snowball effect. It does have a snowball effect. It gets just really toxic, and it gets really negative and really bad. But when things are really positive and really connected, small things have monumental impacts, like
So true.
huge
Yeah.
impacts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk about the reverse now. So we've been talking about how when we want to quote unquote control our kids or redirect them, like how we have to step into a space of calm and connection in order for them to receive um, the direction, how we
Mm-hmm.
like smoothly and coherently. But what happens if it's the child who's overwhelmed or has big emotions? What helps them move from pure emotion into a place where they can think and listen and problem solve if they're at that age of problem solving?
Right, right. I know. And so there's so many theories on this. And here's always going to be my response to these questions. Again, it goes back to like that living system principle in the fact that like every family is unique.
Mhm.
Okay. And just like your family, some things work for you guys, some things will work for my family and some things will be different. So this is where I truly believe in like parent coaching rather than like particular programs. Um, Because, and even like when we read books, you know, like sometimes we'll read books and we'll be like, oh, I'm going to try this and this. And we'll try it and we'll be like, why did this work for everybody else, but it didn't work for me?
Yeah.
It's so frustrating, right? Here's the thing. As a system, you and I are totally different. You and I have completely different strengths as parents. And so that means what works for your kids and what works for you is not going to be the same thing that works for me. Mm-hmm. And so I can definitely share some things that help the kids, but I truly believe tapping into your strengths as a parent and finding what works individually and what has worked for you in small ways in the past is truly key. So like, what is one, and this would be a question I usually ask all my clients, but what is something that you've done in the past where you've had, maybe your child's had a difficult time and you've seen them come through with those behaviors? And what was like even just like a small way where you guys have seen you connect and you've seen your child be able to connect with you and come through in that behavior. Because, you know, for some kids, it might be picking up and holding them and letting them just feel you and hug you. But for some kids, they might not want to be hugged and touched, and that might not work for them. So every kid is different and every parent might handle it differently. So I do think that no matter what, that connection piece is there. We have to remember always that lecturing our kids in those moments is not helpful. And that's something hard for all of us to do, because we immediately want to go and talk to our kids about like whatever our point is. And we want to like help our kids with logic, right? Because it's like, okay, you know, like you have to put your shoes on right now because we're going to be late. And like, this is like all the reasons why we have to do this. But, you know, like your kid has like some reason or rhyme why they are upset right now and why they don't want to put on their shoes. And they just probably need an emotional minute to be able to slow down and process whatever it is that's going through their mind and going through their heart. And that's important for us to emotionally tune into and give them that minute or however long it is to connect. And that can be hard as parents. It's hard for us to slow down.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to be late.
Yeah. It is hard, especially with kid stuff. Like they don't, any kid appointment or any kid activity, like being on time is really, like for example, at schools I teach at for kids yoga, or if I drop my kids off at their daycare, like the pickup time needs to be on the dot. You need to be there on the dot with the kids. So that's already an element of anxiousness in the parent. But I really appreciate how you said, like, and it's always those big emotions that come, or some accident comes when you're like already running late, right? But like pause, slow down, and let them process whatever it is that's making them have those big emotions, because they don't necessarily understand the time, the clock, and why we need to be in a certain place. But it's so much more important for them to process, because if they don't process their big feelings, then it gets shut in the treasure chest of stuff that'll get complicated later on in life.
It does.
And that reminds me of my mom too. When I was a kid, one thing when I'd have, because I'm sensitive, like if I had big emotions, she'd try to like logic her way or explain or lecture me, and my emotions would just grow, and I'd feel my words get caught in my throat, and it was never helpful. but like if we could just take a breath and breathe, but like that was never practiced, but also older generations didn't, this wasn't really a practice for older generations either, like
No,
emotional regulation and intelligence. So
no.
for kids who can, or maybe you can also just kind of point at what age. I know every children kind of learn language at different ages and paces, but how does helping a child put words into their feelings support emotional regulation, or like how do you go about putting words, helping them put words together?
So I do it so different. And I'm going to share this piece with you guys because it is, I think, like really, really helpful. And I do it, and it's very unique. I do it not just through the words that we feel, like how we say typical, I feel sad or I feel mad, because it is important to teach your kids those things. I start reading feeling books with my kids. And I started teaching that with 2 and 3 year olds, very, very young. Okay. Where we start doing social stories. Okay. All the time. Like, this is what that feeling feels like. We talk about that, those different situations. So that way, when we get to that point and we are having that, we can say, like, my son says to me, Mommy, I'm feeling frustrated right now. He like says it so clear. Here's the thing. I ask him, where are you feeling frustrated in your body?
Yes.
Like you just told me right now, I would feel it in my throat. Isn't it so cool how as a child you knew where you felt it in your body? And my daughter is the same way. She manifests all her feelings in her throat.
Yeah.
She feels her sadness in her throat.
Uh-huh.
It's very, very important, I think, as growing up through life to start to notice where we hold these feelings in our body, because it helps us to recognize these feelings before our brain can. So our body always can recognize where these feelings are before our brain can. We can feel them long before our brain can. So like, for me, I know when I'm starting to get agitated because I feel my shoulders tense up. And I know, okay, Danielle, you need to start taking a couple breaths because all the running around that the kids are doing is starting to kind of frustrate you. And I don't want you to yell at the kids. So that's like me thinking about it in my head,
Yeah.
just from me recognizing my shoulders are tensing up. So what would be really cool is if your kids could start saying, my throat's bothering me, like my throat's starting to get tense. I think I'm feeling nervous, like I'm starting to feel anxious. Right. So starting to recognize that. So I think you start young and you start talking about what it feels like in your body,
Yeah.
not just about naming the feeling.
For
So
sure.
yeah,
Gosh, I just love that you touched up on this. This is really the essence of the work I'm putting out right now is
yes,
like observing our body, because our bodies are super intelligent. Will be so divine. They're divine,
yeah,
and they'll always know everything way before the brain does, because the brain has
yes,
to process, and it also filters through our egos and whatever other millions of spider webs are up in there. But bodies are simple, and the feeling and sensations are not so complicated when we listen to the body. And it's interesting how you're talking about how your children felt it in the throat. And then when I was talking to you about my mom when I was little and I get frustrated, feel it in the throat. And my children, they're 3 now. We started emotions and stuff. Yeah, I think a little bit before, around 2 years old, but they love working on emotions and naming emotions and feelings. And
yeah.
I appreciate that it's never too young that you're even working with them now. And that's just, setting up the foundation for emotional intelligence as they
It
grow.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It
Um,
is.
Do you find that parents struggle more with labeling their child's emotions or noticing and naming their own emotions in the state, or in general, what do you think is the struggle? Because it's us as parents who's trying to navigate and create the healthy environment and raise children successfully, for the
Right.
most part. And where do we struggle figuring out what emotions they're going through and what they need?
So this is such an important question. Oh my gosh, I love this question. And I 100% think that parents have a harder time naming their own emotions
Yeah.
and recognizing things in themselves than they do naming their kids. And again, like I said, most people come to me because they want to fix their kids and fix
Mhm.
something in their kids. But what they often find as we go through our work together is they say, wow, this is stuff I need to work on myself. This is my inner work. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is for you.
Yeah.
And then guess what? Your kids are just going to follow suit. Like they're going to be fine. Like they'll be okay.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. We don't have to name our kids' emotions. That's not our job. And they're so good at doing it. They are so
Yeah.
good at doing it. We can just provide them with the information and we can model for them. Oh my gosh, we are 3 minutes late. Mommy is feeling anxious because I have to get out the door in 3 minutes, but I'm going to breathe and I'm going to be okay. And it's just, I'm going to be fine, but I'm going to put my bag on my shoulder. This is typically what I do when we have to go out the door and I have to be somewhere. I'm just giving an example. And you'll see my kids put their shoes on a little bit faster.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, I'm going to put my bag on my shoulder and I'm going to go walk it down the stairs and put the bag in and I'm going to come back in and get you guys. But I'm breathing. I'm feeling anxious, guys. And this is authentic. It's true. It usually probably sounds a little bit more authentic with my kids. But I talk through my emotions. I call it parallel talk.
Mhm.
And parallel talk is something actually that I pulled as it's a speech therapy practice that we do with children when they're really young. And it's in order to help children develop speech a little bit more. So we just like constantly, oh, I'm washing the dishes. Like now I'm drying the dishes, dry, dry, dry. This is something that we do as therapists. But I do it through emotional regulation. I talk about my feelings and I also talk about what I'm doing because I think it's really helpful for children to know, what you're feeling and to be
Mhm.
talking about it.
Mhm.
And you don't have to do it all the time.
Mhm.
But it is important for you to name those emotions and for your children to be able to, because they feel it already. They already know you're anxious. But
Mhm.
if you're naming it and you're talking about what you're doing,
Yeah.
and it really does help them to see
Yeah.
it.
It's like
Yeah.
real time emotional regulation. Doing it for yourself, and then they can see it in action in real time and apply it.
Yes.
And I can see how that's so effective because, I mean, you notice if you're a parent, your child will pick up on your behaviors even though you don't know that they are. They'll do things like you do, and you didn't even realize you taught them that, or they picked up on that. This is really powerful work. I'm just so grateful we're connecting in this manner and that you're on this path because like you said, parents struggle with their emotions more than children because we weren't also raised and educated in this either. I mean, we are in a space where the information and change is being accessible and shared. But there's no, and there should be some kind of emotional intelligence, you know, class in school.
There should.
Imagine how many
Yeah.
problems would be solved if, one just having self-awareness gives confidence and having the tools to regulate when needed, or observing when other classmates or people or teachers or, just people in the environment are going through their own thing, how it's not about you, and being able to separate, what emotions are not yours and
Mm.
belong to other people. That also helps shed off the weight
Mm-hmm.
of carrying around a lot. How can we notice as parents the difference between a child who's just flooded with emotions and one who is calm enough to hold a conversation or to learn a lesson?
Okay, so when someone's flooded with emotions, or a child is like able to have like a child's able to have a calm
Mm-hmm.
conversation, I mean, there's a lot of different things to look for in that, and I really think again that's really when a parent needs to go, and you really have to start looking at your gut again. So I truly believe that I love to give parents power. And I love to say, you know your child more than anybody.
Yes.
Okay. You know your child more than the teacher. You know your child more than the therapist. You know your child probably more than any doctor. So you are the person who knows everything about your child, and you probably can feel everything about your child. I
Mm-hmm.
really do think that most parents probably know when it's too much for their kid. And so, yeah, sometimes retreating can look like when a child shuts down and they're staring off to space, that can look like a flooded moment.
Mm.
It doesn't always have to be screaming at the top of
Yeah.
their lungs to be a
Yeah.
flooded moment. It can just be a child staring out the window, and they could be having a flooded moment. Every
Yeah.
parent knows their kid differently, or every parent knows their kid, and everything is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
I would say when your child is having a flooded moment, it's really important that you are able to be there for them, and you're able to remove them from whatever situation is flooding them.
Mm.
Um, like I see times where, we live in Florida. I see times where like there's like high sensory environments where children are just like over flooded with like sensory things going on at theme parks, and they're screaming and covering their ears and crying, and parents are just kind of like pushing them through. And it breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart because these kids are not able to handle that at that moment.
Yeah.
They need a break from it. And it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It just means that they need a minute. They need a
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
And same thing when we just like had a bad day at school. I think of my daughter when I pick her up from school sometimes, and she is like completely flooded with emotions. Like it's like she's held it all in all day. And she comes in and she just like is like, I'm safe with mom. Now I'm gonna cry. She's like a completely like lets it all out. This is not the time for me to say, okay, babe, let's get your homework out. Let's do this. Let's do that. She
Mm-hmm.
needs like a good 30 minutes of just me holding her on the couch. I have to
Yeah.
schedule that. I used to have to schedule that in my day. I
Yeah.
used to have to schedule in my day 30-minute block of Izzy, just relaxing and being able to be there and emotionally support my daughter because she had a tough
Mm-hmm.
year last year.
Yeah.
So it's just really, you really have to know your kid, and what are those signs that they're being emotionally flooded, and you have to be able to be there to hold those
Yeah.
emotions
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
them.
If we can't slow down enough ourselves, we won't see it in our kids. And
Mm-mm.
I love how, yeah, my mom sees me and knows my truth more than anyone too. That just like 2 weeks ago we were FaceTiming and she's like, "You look sad." And I just want to be like, "Yeah, mom, I'm sad." I just want like a little kid, like no one noticed. No, not my husband, not my dad, not
Yeah.
my, but my mom, like immediate. She's like, "You look sad." And then later on, I like call and we talk about the sadness. But I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I had like so much I wanted to cry about and just talk about." It. And then it's all cleansed. So it never goes away, however old we are, and just our
No,
parents knowing us the best, and that is a very safe, creating safety through
yeah,
emotional connection and presence is so important.
it
Um,
is.
how can parents tune in to what their child is experiencing internally, not just what they're going through externally? Like you said, your daughter was going through a lot. She had a big year last year. So obviously the external circumstances maybe brought the attention, but how can we tune into what's going on internally?
Wow. So here's the thing that I've realized through parent coaching is we don't ask our kids enough questions. And we have to start asking our kids more questions. People will come to me and be like, I don't know if I should switch my kid out of like this after school program. And like the first thing I ask them is, well, what is your 6-year-old thing? What does your 6-year-old want to do? And they're like, I don't think I've ever really thought of to ask her. And
Mm.
I was like, I'm sure they have an opinion. And we don't give our kids enough credit by giving them autonomy and giving them choice and giving them, some opportunity to share and talk about what's going on. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to make time for deep conversations. Our kids have a lot to say. They have a
Mm-hmm.
lot that they want to tell us, and they want to share it. A lot of people talk about, well, when do kids open up? When do kids start to talk? My kid doesn't want to talk to me. My kid doesn't answer my questions. Kids always want to talk to you when they go to bed. We know this for a fact. So
Really?
the most important times that are when they wake up in the morning, when you pick them up from school, and when they go to bed. In fact, those will be some of the times, those memories that they are really going to hold on to for a really long time. But a lot of people, you see it on Instagram. People will make reels about like, oh my gosh, like I'm trying to put my kids to bed, and they're just jibber jabbering, talking. Hold on to those moments, please, and let them talk. And that's when you start to ask all those questions,
Uh,
like, and I would ask big questions like, this is one I always like to ask is, if you could spend your ideal day, your dream day, what would you do? What would be in it? What's something that's made you proud lately?
mm-hmm.
Um, what's something that you like to do as a family? Asking your kid that. Don't just ask them what did you do at school today, but try to find
Mm-hmm.
out like what are their values? What do they
Yeah.
enjoy? What brings them joy? And they'll start telling you so much more about themselves than you ever imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And that dream day thing is really just like such a fun question to ask them. And you can even ask like a 4-year-old and they'll give you some like crazy stuff. It's great. I mean, like sometimes they'll be like, I'm like riding a unicorn and doing all these fun things. But like there's ways that you can kind of start to build what brings them joy and what they value, and you can kind of start to bring those things to life for them, and that's how you start building their authentic selves. That's how you start making them into who they want to be as a person. You start
Yeah.
building their self-concept.
Uh-huh.
Even if it's just like drawing a picture of a unicorn the next day,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're building something that brings them joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So we
You
have to look at our
mentioned,
kids a little bit more on the inside.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, looking or going internal is asking questions to kind of explore their inner world, inner landscape and atmosphere, which is constantly changing, but full of imagination. I'm curious. You said the three times where they like to talk and share the most are when they wake up, pick up from school, and go to bed. Is there science behind this, or is this your observations?
This This is 100% my observation and what I hear parents telling me. So, and then I would say that this is like, I would say that kids are different, right? Again, so be attuned to what works best for your family. So, again, where are the strengths in how your child communicates? So, some parents, they can't get their kid to communicate. And I say, well, tell me about like a time your kid has communicated. And they'll say, oh, well, actually, when I took him to a baseball game, he like really opened up to me. And I'll be like, well, there you go. Why don't you, like take him to something sports related and start to ask him some of those questions. Or like, well, when we were on a bike ride, they started to communicate a little bit better. Cause like some kids, like this type of this right here, what we're doing, this is really confrontational. This is really uncomfortable for people looking. And for me, it's not. But for some children, it really could be confrontational and it could be uncomfortable. So you really have to, again, focus on your child's strengths and how they communicate. And then, what works for them. So if you have a teenage boy who doesn't want to talk to you about anything, I would probably keep that pretty short and just kind of drop in little questions here or there, and then see if he wants to go to like a movie with you and ask some questions while you're in the popcorn line. Keep it nonchalant. It doesn't have to be a deep conversation.
Not so obvious, not so forced. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. You have to find what works.
What about for the parents who just aren't great with talks and emotions?
I had a parent who didn't love the talks and emotions, and it was always fun. And again, we were always kind of like, well, how do we connect, right? And it's like, what do we do to connect with our child? Everybody has a way to connect with your child. Everybody does, right? For this parent, it was playfulness. It was just spending one-to-one moments with each other. And, I think that that's really where you have to look at it is how do we connect with our kids? Do we sit and read a story? I have another parent how he connected with his kids was very literal. So he loved to just like teach them. He was a teacher. And so for him, how he connected was teaching them about topics and, actually being very concrete. And this worked for him, like teaching them facts about things and then just talking about those facts was a great way for him to connect and a great way to open up communication. And he got super excited about it. And because he was excited, his kids got excited.
Yeah. Because he was being his authentic self, right? So
because he was being his authentic self. You're exactly right. And he was working off his strengths. He was doing what came naturally to him. Because when we try to fake it and we try to be like, doing something that doesn't work for us, well, it's just not gonna, it's not gonna happen. And our kids, again, like it goes back to that, our kids can read our emotions and they go back to like, it's just, they already know. And they're just like, it's not happening, mom and dad. So especially when they start getting a little bit older and they are teenagers and they just start seeing right through us. So
let's talk about motivation. So through my personal experience, working with kids, and my own children, and especially the younger ones too, most of them are really motivated by things like candy or stickers or like external motivation. What, like in this world filled with all those external rewards or comparison or consequences, how can we help our children kind of be driven from within their own selves at an early age, or what works other than candy and stickers?
Right. Right. This is the hardest question for all parents, right?
Yeah.
And because here's the other thing with external and internal motivation. External motivation, the rewards, punishment, and consequences, it kills internal motivation. It
Yeah.
kills it.
Yeah.
It extinguishes it. And so like you said, we live in a world full of external motivation. So it's very hard for us as parents to intrinsically motivate our children.
Mm-hmm.
However, we want them to be intrinsically motivated. We want them to want to have a room that's clean because it feels good.
Yeah.
We want them to do well in school because they enjoy school, or because they're motivated, not because they're going to get an A on the test or because they care about getting an A, just because they like to learn. They love to learn and they want to have that growth mindset. So how do we get our kids to do this, right? So I have two things that I usually give to parents, because unfortunately, I don't think we can distinguish external motivators in the world that we live in. I do think the school system is starting to do better by starting to do less external motivation. I would say one is start doing less like fear-based parenting. So if you are a fear-based parent, using threats and consequences, not doing that as a parent, that's really important. And if you do slip into it, it's okay. Just make sure you go back and you talk about it with your kids. Like if I do something like, if you don't clean up now, there's no TV tonight. Okay. If I threaten my kids and I do that, I will turn right back around and be like, I'm so sorry that I threatened you. That was not a good choice on mommy. I'm not going to take away, the 30 minutes of TV, or I'm not, it's just, if we don't get this room cleaned up by this period of time, we won't actually have enough time to watch TV. And so that's what I'm concerned about. So can we talk about it and find a way that we can get this room cleaned up together? And that's like kind of how I would handle a situation where if I dropped into fear-based parenting, because I think unfortunately a lot of us were raised that way. So we do drop into it a lot.
Just conditioned.
We're conditioned. And so I think it's like, it takes time to stop doing the threats and the consequences, and that takes time to stop. And I work with a lot of parents on that. But there is two things that I do think that help with intrinsic motivation. And one of them is using specific positive praise. And I know a lot of people talk about that. So specific positive praise is not just saying like when your kid does something, not just saying like, oh, great job making that drawing. Okay. It's saying, let's say they cleaned up their room, and you go into their room and you go, wow, your room is clean. I can't believe you got everything picked up off the floor in time for us to go to the movies. I'm so impressed that you did all of this work, and then I want you to do this one thing. We add reflection to it. And you ask them, how does it make you feel to have your room all picked up and clean? Or how does it make you feel that you got this accomplished? So when we add that piece of that reflection, that starts to add that internal motivation piece in, and that actually really helps your child to start to internalize it. You don't have to do this all the time that you do specific praise, but it certainly helps your child a lot when you start to add in that reflection piece. Another thing can be like, let's say your child studies really hard on a test. Okay. Wow. You worked really hard studying for that test. I'm so incredibly proud of how much time you dedicated to working so hard on this. How do you feel about everything that you learned in that time that you studied? And get some feedback from your kid. Find out, what they studied. Find out how they felt about it and what they enjoyed. What did they enjoy learning? So again, we're internalizing the learning. We're internalizing the growth mindset. We're internalizing everything about it. So that's one thing that I always do is I start to build in reflection moments. The other thing that I always like to do is I talk about the process with my kids rather than I talk about the actual performance. So I have a daughter. She's a big performer. She goes on stage all the time. We never talk about the actual performance. We talk about like what she's actually doing, like how it, like all of the process that she does to get there. Same thing when your kids are building something with blocks. Let's say like you come home and your child has built this tower. I want you to go to your child and say, "You built this? Can you show me how you did this? I want to learn how to build something like this." I mean, Jackie, could you imagine if someone came up to you and was like, "I loved your podcast. Can you show me how you prepare for your podcast and how you film it and like how you do the whole thing? Because like it's so incredible." Like how that would make you feel as a person, as someone who is as your job, like it would make you feel really excited about what you do. It would make you feel good about it. So when we talk about the child's process, they are more internally motivated. So I think those two things can really start to build intrinsic motivation in children. And it does kind of help flip the switch on that external motivation. The other thing, and it's kind of more of a big picture, is building autonomy in our kids. So we have to start building autonomy. We have to start allowing them to have more choice, allowing them to have more sense of belonging. When they have these things, they are more intrinsically motivated.
Yeah. This is so powerful. Well, when you said, well, we've been talking about feelings, and I like how you said adding reflection. That brings it inward because then they start to reflect on the process and how it feels. It's the feeling, like when you have emotional intelligence and you're aware of the feelings, and you can understand the why. And it reminded me, potty training. Potty training is a huge it's no small effort. Maybe it is for some people, but my daughter, she was good. When we first started, she got it like in a few days. My son was about 6 months behind, but he kind of started with her anyway because they're twins, and she was already doing it, so he would do it. But so I was honoring their different speeds and paces. But then there was a point where she kind of regressed, and it was like holding her number twos in. And this was frustrating, of course, because it's a lot of cleaning and inconvenience and just added stress as parents. Um, and then it just came to me naturally, being like, "See, your tummy feels better, right? If you just let it out." And she's like, "Yeah, yeah." And then every time she would take her number two, she'd be like, "Tummy better, tummy feels so good." And then so for her now it's effortless, smooth. I'm not saying it's going to be perfect all the time, but that was the shift. Her understanding that her stomach is going to feel better versus holding it in. And And then I really appreciate also how you said, ask them how the process was like. If they built that castle, to show you or to explain, and that like the underlying level there is like the heart feels elevated and magnetic, and I think it helps, just us as humans just understand what brings us joy, what self-awareness and what we're good at and how we can contribute to the world around us, from an early age, understanding when our hearts become elevated, aligning with the things that are right for us, it's just, this is good. Adding reflection, and not talking about the performance, but the process.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so good. Because it's not about, because everyone's going to make mistakes, and children can be very hard on themselves because they think that that's what they're going to be loved, like conditional love. And, we that's not where we want to go.
No,
Yeah. Going back to your pillars of, the living system, with the child, parent, environment, you spoke about, roles in productive community and spiritual community. Two spaces we all live in simultaneously. The things we have to do, the day to days, the business, and then the things that are just that, the belonging, the community, the sense of purpose and place and space. And how do you see those roles shaping us as parents and as humans?
Wow. So it's really interesting when we think of like a productive community. We think of, and like when I think of a productive community, I think of actually of how Quinn describes it. And Quinn wrote this book. I grabbed it really quick. If you haven't had the chance to read it, it's great. It's called Change the World. I definitely recommend that you read it. Anybody who's working on like self-actualization or becoming into like their higher self should read it. But it's really just like imagining a community that is built in kind of like self-trust, is built in, high standards, being able to like be very grounded, and have a lot of trust within each other. And so when I imagine my productive community, I really do imagine parents that are able to emotionally regulate, that are able to hold, this calm, that allows children to develop and start to become their authentic selves at an early age. And so that way they go out into this world and they become these people that can change the world. And that is what I imagine as like my productive community. So when I say that we have to have a productive community and we have to have a spiritual community, I mean it in the fact that being in a productive community means that we are part of a community that, we have a sense of belonging to, that we have people around us, that kind of have the same belief as us. And they start to also kind of mold into this agent, like this changing of the world. And we start to get there as a community. And so when we have this sense of belonging, we start to reach self-actualization. But I also believe that we have to have this spiritual part as well. So we have to be we have to have this spiritual part where we have that self-guidance, from something that's higher than us, a higher power than us. Because it's really hard. I've seen people that have had a sense of belonging. They've been able to connect with people and they've been a part of a community that has had a higher purpose. Okay. But they didn't have that spiritual part. Yeah. And I've seen that it's been very hard for them. Or I've seen people that have had that spiritual community, but they've lacked that productive community. They haven't really had that sense of belonging or that higher purpose. So I truly believe that when we have both, we really have a lot to contribute to this world, and we all start to become kind of like this change agent. We start to become this person who will start to change the world. How does this affect us as parents? As parents, we are changing these children. Okay. So we really do need to be in a place where we are doing well for ourselves. We need to be a productive member of society.
Yeah.
We need to be spiritually connected. We need to have good self-care. We need to have good self-regulation. We need to have intrinsic motivation. All of these things that we've talked about today, we need to have all of these things under our belt in order to be a good parent. It's very hard. It's very, very hard to be a good parent if we're not into set like a good mold. And maybe we can be a good parent, but to really help our children grow into these authentic human beings, which I really think is what people want these days. I really do think that people want our children to go out into the world and be truly happy and truly step into their authentic selves. I think that parents want, I think when I ask parents, like, what do you want for your kids these days? They say, I just want them to be happy. And I get that, you know, like they don't say, I want them to go to Harvard, or they don't say like, I want them to be a lawyer. They don't say like all these, they just say, I want them to be happy. Well, here are the steps, you know, like this is what we have to do. We really have to work on ourselves, and we have to do a lot of inner work.
Absolutely.
But yeah, part of that is stepping into becoming a productive member of society, and also having that spiritual community.
Yeah. This is so spot on. And in my personal experience, I've had, I've been productive, but the spiritual was absent, or just spiritual, the productive was absent. But now I feel like once I had kids, they're like, they just had productive and spiritual came together effortlessly almost. And I think that's what really empowered me, in a way, having those two communities into one. Just it really, everything you're hitting on right now is just making so much more sense. And this isn't common language either in society. Do you work with parents who are like agnostic or atheist, or just don't really have a spiritual life, or don't want a spiritual life? And how do you help them?
I have like even actually I've worked with parents that like have like no belief system. And, it's interesting, like how we navigate that. And what's kind of interesting is as we go through this, we tend to see that by the time we get to this point, like I would say session 9, they realize that there's something in their life that they need. Okay. And I'm not saying that like we atheists will say, I need to believe in God. There's a lot of different beliefs out there. Right. And that's why I always say like a power higher than yourself. Okay. Because we're not necessarily believing in, and I'm fully accepting of all religions. Okay. Because we all come from different backgrounds, but I do think we need to have some kind of spirituality. Whatever that spirituality is, that is okay. But, I do think that there needs to be some kind of belief system, whether if that is just meditating and you connecting with the earth and the ground, and that is your spiritual connection. That is okay. That is how we can spiritually connect. Or if you are able to spiritually connect with the universe and you're able to spiritually connect with your higher self, that is also okay. If you have a strong connection with Christianity, that is okay. Like, all of these belief systems are wonderful, but we have to have some kind of spiritual community, I believe. It's just, we all, like I said, we're all unique human beings. Like, we're all different, and our spirituality looks different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
What helps families move closer to self-actualization, like individually and as a collective home environment?
So 100%, all of those things that we just talked about, like all of the things that we talked about today. So again, it is, we didn't talk about self-care. And I honestly, truly believe that without radical self-care, and when I talk about like radical self-care, I'm talking about not your eating healthy or going to work out. I believe that everybody has different levels of self-care, and everybody has different like things that we can do for self-care. Sometimes, like for me, self-care, it looks like having a good intimate relationship, growing my intelligence, working on spirituality, having hobbies and joy. These are just some examples. Having really good relationships with my friends. Like, these are all parts of my self-care. It's also being healthy. But so there's radical self-care. I believe that is something that we all have to do. We have to be taking care of ourselves. And then we have to have that emotional regulation piece. We have to start working on that intrinsic motivation. We have to know what our values are as parents. We have to know what truly motivates us and who we are and how we grow, what it is that we want to step into. And then once we get there, we do need to start looking at, what is our productive community? What is it that we can envision? What is it that we can imagine the world to be? Okay. And this is really, really important, because we are, as human beings, we're living people. We're always growing. We're always evolving. We want to grow. We want to evolve, and we want the world to grow. So we, as human beings, we also want to help the world grow. So I think that we are only truly happy when we're stepping into a world that we're helping it grow. So when we're stepping into a world that is a productive community, like you do, like you've built a community where you're really helping people, and you really are able to give something, and you've built this community around you where you connect with these people all the time. Like, this is you're changing lives, Jackie.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. It's special. And so I think when we're able to step into all of those things and we get to that place, that's when we are able to help our children find their authentic selves. And so when we're doing these things, we're able to offer our children autonomy. We're able to offer our children choice. We're able to start helping them build into who they actually are. But it does take inner work. It takes work on ourselves.
It really does. It really, really does. I love how you use the word radical self-care. What does the word radical mean to you, and why do you choose to use that word when it comes to self-care?
Right. And so some people are probably thinking, oh my gosh, this girl's going to make me wake up at 5 a.m. and work out. And that's not true, because I don't do it. And I don't wait. I did wake up at 5 a.m. this morning, but it was to work on, it was to do work and not work out. So radical self-care is really taking an inventory of yourself. And that is what I like to do. But also, And when I say take an inventory, I'm not saying take an inventory of your faults. I'm saying take an inventory of your strengths and what brings you joy. Okay. Because that is what we want to look at. I love to ask people if you could spend 2 hours a day, 2 uninterrupted hours, and that 2 hours a day was full of self-care, what would you do? Like, give me 10 things. Just give me 10 things. They can be, taking a cooking class. It can be taking a nap. It can be, doing your skincare routine. It can be taking the dog for a walk. It can be anything. But what would you fill that day with? It can be listening to a podcast. And so what would those things be? And make that list. And then start to every day take 15 minutes and pick something from that list. And we're going to just do that for 15 minutes because that's where we start to do radical self-care is in small changes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be a big change where you're waking up at 5 a.m. No parent does that. I don't know who she is. God bless her. But I don't.
Neither.
So yeah, it's just too early, and my kids, my kids wake up if I wake up that early. So they get up if I wake up that early.
Yeah.
So, but if we can just take 15 minutes and make these small changes for ourselves, it does start to end up kind of having that snowball effect, and that small time that we give back to ourselves. Wow, it makes such a difference. Like if you've meditated for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, that small time that you've meditated has given you so much more energy back. It's huge.
For sure.
It's huge.
Yeah, it is huge.
Yeah.
Where do you see most parents unintentionally abandoning themselves or for the self-care when you asked literally the 2 hours a day, what would you do? I was like, what would I do? I think I do all the things that give me joy, but also it's just never me time really. I mean, yeah, like yoga practice, meditation. I squeeze all those little things in, but to have completely uninterrupted just me time for 2 hours, what? But where do you see in your experience or just in your knowledge, where do most parents abandon themselves in this respect?
So I would say their hobbies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like think about what you did when you were a kid and you were maybe 7 or 8 years old. And what brought you joy. Because we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Painting,
Uh-huh.
really little kid things, no, I'm not talking about playing with Barbies, but painting or doing a clay class or I don't know, playing basketball, with some friends, I mean, there's some guys who do that and I'm super impressed by them, that make time to go play basketball. But yeah, I mean, we don't have enough hobbies. Kids get to do hobbies all the time. And it's not, I look at their camps, their summers, and I'm like, that's so unfair. They're going to musical theater and then they get to go to art camp and, and we are, working, but why don't we take a week off and go take a class somewhere? Why not? Yeah.
So true about the hobbies, and it's funny you pointed this out because along the way I've let go of a bunch of hobbies because of time and where you're focusing. You can't do it all at once. But in my head, the back burner of my goals is when my kids are old enough to start getting into activities and all that. I'm going to do it with them. So I'm going to get back into all those things or pick up new hobbies and and do it together with them.
Yeah.
So at the heart of your work, what do you wish every parent understood about their child's behavior that would just instantly change the way they respond?
I think it goes back to, again, recognizing that our kids, they feel our emotions before we say anything. So before before words come out of our mouth, they already know what's going on. They already know you're mad. They already know that you're frustrated. And they already can feel that. And we know this from even just child development from a young age, right? Like before kids could even communicate, a baby, if you look at a baby and you go like that to a baby, they will respond. Okay. Or even if you just are tense and emotional and anxious with a baby, they kind of start to pick up on those cues. And so, yeah, I would say that just understanding that we as human beings feed off each other's emotions without even saying anything. Like you and I can walk in a room, and if one of us is emotionally tense, we can feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so know that about your kids. Know that your kids are feeling your emotions as soon as you are walking in the door from work, from whatever you have. And we have to, as parents, start looking inward and taking ownership over what we have going on. And we have to stop putting it on our kids. We have to do the work. We have to be looking inward.
Absolutely. If every parent understood one thing about how the child's brain develops, what would you say? What's the most important thing about understanding brain development in children? And it's funny because we were all a child once. When we grow up,
Right.
So some people completely detached from the inner child, and some people are more still, can access that. But what's the most important thing to understand about their brain development?
I think oftentimes we forget that kids, we forget the growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
And people will ask me what's the growth mindset? We're always growing. And when I say that too, you're growing too as a parent. Okay. And their brains are constantly growing, and, they're growing from the environment that they're in. So no matter what we're doing, when you expose them to something or you have some type of interaction with them, it's training their brain for something. It is creating pathways, and it is starting to develop their brain. So keep that in mind when we threaten and we start to throw those fear-based consequences in. We have to go back and talk about it, because we are training their brain at that moment. And we know this because you and I are sitting here talking about this. We're saying, oh yes, that's how we learned as kids. So that's what comes naturally to us. Yes, because that's how our brain developed. Yeah. So our brains develop from the experiences around us. And so it's really important that we are constantly growing, and that we're constantly developing, and we develop through these experiences that we actually live. And so with that being said, I think it's also really important that we have a very, very rich environment. And I think a lot of people miss this, because we do love to, and this is the only time I'll talk about this, is we like to turn on the TV. We love to turn on screens for our kids.
Too easy. Too easy. Yeah.
So easy. It's a babysitter. Screens are a tool and it's helpful. But if we're not enriching their environment and we're not creating an environment that is full of learning and full of interactions where they have emotions and they have opportunities to regulate, then their brain's not growing. They're not learning how to handle these emotions. And they also they're not learning, they're not developing. And we're seeing a big change in child development lately. We're seeing a lot of shifts where kids are having a lot of OT, they need a lot more OT support. They're dropping in fine motor skills because they're playing a lot less and they're on screens a lot more. They're having more difficulty with attention because they are used to that 3 to 5 second switch. And it's starting to affect their brains by being on the screens more. So,
yeah, definitely. That's just reminding me, even when especially my daughter too, when they get their TV time and they get their remote, they won't watch a full show. They'll change it and change it within minutes and and then they'll fight over what show they want to watch or whatever. But when I see that, I'm like, I got to be mindful of that. Like, it's already there at 3 years old, at 2 years old. So let me go back to my thought right now. Let's talk about, so with the developing brain and just being mindful about the experiences our children get or just everyday things. A lot of things that we don't talk about or people put on, that share publicly are the things that trigger us, the things that throw or dysregulate us and our emotions. And some can, like we were talking about before the interview, be really surprising and out of the blue. And you didn't know that lived inside of you until it was triggered. So, well, what does it look like, or what, in your experience, what are the biggest triggers that parents have shared that kind of guide them toward where you guide them into self-reflection, self-assessment of where our own behaviors are, blocking manifesting healthy relationships with our children, or when we are dumping our own, past and traumas and triggers into that, because the children are already soaking up our emotions. So what are the biggest things that trigger us, or what have you noticed?
Yeah, no, this is so important. And I always explain to parents, like we have to look at it like we come to our kids, if our cup is full, okay, like our regulation cup, I always explain it. And I wish I had a glass in front of me to show you. I have my Stanley, so I don't have that. But if I had a glass of water, if our glass is full and it's filled to the brim, okay, and our kids are dripping and whatever it is, like they're screaming like monkeys in the kitchen while we're trying to cook. Okay, I'm just trying to think of what triggers me. And they're screaming like monkeys and we're trying to cook and they're just dripping. And we're already full to the brim. Those little drips are going to spill us over and they're going to make us spiral. Okay. So that's why all of this work that we talked about, like the self-care and being able to give ourselves some time to kind of regulate and give yourself some time back, it brings that cup down a little bit. It helps it. So that way, when they drip in, you're not spilling over. You're not flipping your lid is what a lot of people quite like to call it. So when we're in a flipped lid, we leave the logical place of our brain and we go to the fear response. Okay. And once we're in that response, there's no way, there's no turning back. Um, but there's a couple things that I like to do. One is I notice what's going on in my body when I start to recognize, okay, my shoulders are getting tense. They're screaming. I need to do some regulation. I need to do some in the moment regulation. Okay. So I believe in maintenance regulation, and this goes back into my framework. So I do talk about this with my clients, is for the parent, you should always be doing maintenance regulation, and then you should always be doing in the moment regulation. And those in the moment regulation, that can look like just grounding. So that can be like pushing your feet into the ground and really breathing through whatever that is. Sometimes I've seen people like twist towels just to kind of try to like get out whatever is like that frustration. Sometimes it can just be like, I like to hum because like, I don't know if you're familiar with like your vagus nerve, but like humming can actually like help you reset your vagus nerve. So there's some other little tricks that I have, but even sometimes I just take like 30 seconds and I go into the bathroom and I take a nourishing breath. My kids will be okay for 30 seconds. Hopefully just make sure your kids are fine. That is like my PSA, but like, if you, just take a nourishing breath. So we have to do in the moment regulation if you are able to notice what's going on in your body. If you find yourself flipping and like a bag of chips on the floor is throwing you over the edge and you're losing it all the time, things like that, and like you're constantly stuck in old patterns. I call it a loop. And it's, a lot of people call it in breaking cycles, and, like we are stuck in our past trauma. Okay. And when we find ourselves stuck in our past trauma, this is when we have to differentiate between a coaching relationship and a therapeutic relationship. When we find that the things that we are trying to do, like grounding, breathing, these things aren't helping us and we're not able to move forward. We're not able to take these steps. This is when it's a really, really good time to reach out to a therapist and say, I need some help with my triggers. I need to talk about what happened when I was a kid. And I need to talk about, why a messy house really bothers me. Or I need to talk about why all the screaming really bothers me, because maybe sometimes it's something more than that.
It's always something more. Yeah.
And sometimes and this is saying if we can't move forward, a lot of times my clients can move forward. A lot of times we can move into a forward direction, but sometimes we can't. Sometimes we're dealing with people pleasing. And that's carrying a lot of weight with us. So we're constantly checking our phone and we're constantly answering text messages from our boss. And because we're constantly answering text messages from our boss, when our kids are bothering us and talking to us, we're snapping at them. Okay. Well, people pleasing and working on that is not always something that a coach can work with you on. So that's something that maybe a therapist can. So,
I think everyone should have a therapist. I have one. And when I first got one, I didn't even really know why I needed it. It was actually an accident. I was doing a telehealth visit, and it was meant to be like meeting with a doctor, and I got placed with a therapist, and we were talking. I was like, wow, he's a really nice doctor. And then realized we were set it wrong. And then I was like, maybe I do need therapy. I don't even know why, but let me check it out. And then realize, like, working with him throughout the year, now I'm realizing like why I need it. Everyone needs one. Is my PSA too.
Yes, therapy is incredible, and it can really, I think everyone can benefit from it. And it really can be helpful for people. And it can get you in a place where you're ready for coaching, and you can be ready to move into your authentic self. I truly am a big believer in therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about parenting and our children, but not all families, but the families that have, well, a mom and a dad, whether they live together or not, what happens? It really becomes hard to stay regulated. Marriage, partnerships is really hard. It's a really hard relationship. And everything's, as long as we're alive, everything's always changing. There's always a lesson to learn. But what happens when two parents just don't vibe or not on the same page or think or have different values and they kind of conflict? How do we navigate that? Because then also the internal structure of marriage, or just partnerships, whether you live together or not, can really complicate our nervous systems and how we raise our families as well. So insight into that dynamic.
Yeah, no, I think this is so important. And actually, like one of my pillars for self-care is your relationship with your partner and intimacy. At least that is for me, but I understand if it's not for other people. You know, when I work with parents, I always take them through this, I wouldn't call it an inventory. It's more like, it's a way for them to help them understand what their strengths are, and also for them just to kind of understand like what their personality is as a parent. Because we all have like different parenting personalities, but with those different personalities also comes parenting strengths. And I think that that's really cool. Because like, just for an example, I'm an intuitor. I have like big ideas. I start like crazy projects around my house. I have like also like some big feelings. I also love to talk about things like nonstop. And this drives my husband absolutely bonkers. Like he just wants the details in things, right? Like he just wants to get to the basics. He wants to know like exactly what the plan is. My daughter is also like this. So I also walk parents through like what their kids are like what are their kids' personalities, and how do we all kind of fit together? This is like a puzzle, because once we kind of start to understand this, it really helps us kind of start to appreciate the other person, because there's a lot of things that my husband does that I can't do. Like I'm not very good with structure, but my husband's fantastic at it. He's so good with structure and he's good at implementing it. And this is something that we kind of need as a family, and he's fantastic at it. So when I start to have, parents with different values, also we have different strengths. We start to look at, what are our different strengths? What can we appreciate about each other? Because that is really the essence of coaching, is finding and noticing what do we appreciate about each other. And then we start to look at, well, what do we value? What's really important to us? Because that is usually what we do in about like session 2 of coaching. Like what are our values, and how do we communicate values to our family? And that's important.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. When you have clarity in what your values are, you have no problem setting limits and boundaries with other people.
Yes.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
But you have to know what that is.
You have to know. You have to be clear. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes that does take a little bit of work. It does take, really talking about it with someone and really digging deep and knowing what some of those are. And then it's really easy to go to that significant other or go to that child and say like, hey, when this happens, I feel I feel this way. And so when it happens again, this is what I'm going to do. That's how we set a boundary. That's just like a quick example of how we set boundaries. And, like a limit that I have with my kids is, in our family, we only watch TV for 20 minutes. And, at that point, we are going to turn it off. So, so this is just how we set limits and boundaries and how we're able to communicate them. But yeah.
There's always something to, every day has its own set of challenges and presents, and it's the beautiful thing about life. What makes it so precious is that it's fleeting, so just really looking closely and just every opportunity as a growth opportunity and an opportunity to become closer and more authentic and just elevated. Before we wrap up, Danielle, what do you, when you look at the future of parenting, what do you see? What do you hope?
I truly, truly hope that parents are able to authentically connect with their children. From a place of calm, and they can go through life knowing that they don't have to change anything in their kids. They don't have to make them perform. They don't have to make them be this person that, that these expectations that we have in this world. And they can just let them be and be present and just enjoy their children. And with that, they are able to help them become who they truly want to be, these children, who they truly want to be, and be their authentic selves. And that is really my goal in parent coaching is helping parents help their kids step into themselves and kind of helping parents enjoy their parenthood. Because I think we all want to just enjoy it. We want to live this process. It's so special. It's so beautiful to be a parent. I really want parents to be able to just enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Danielle, for sharing your heart, your mission, your work. This is, I think right now, in regard to this question, things are changing in regard to the family structure and how we raise our kids more mindfully and in healthy ways. I'll put Danielle's information in the show notes. If you are listening to this episode and you feel, yes, I could use some coaching and parent support, please reach out to her. You will not regret it. And she is so fantastic. Danielle, thank you once again so much from the bottom of my heart. I can't wait to share this interview with our audience and spread them this message of parenting in new and elevated ways.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was amazing.
Thank you for sharing time and space with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Your support helps keep this podcast alive. And together, we thrive. I'll meet you here next Thursday. May your week be abundant and blessed. In the sound of Om, we say everything.